everybody. Welcome into the Sportscaster and her son, where sports bridges the gap between the generations. I'm your co-host, 12-time Emmy award-winning sportscaster Peggy Kaczynski from ESPN Radio Chicago. I'm the mom, I'm the sportscaster, and I'm the baby boomer.
And I'm the son. I'm Jason Conander from CBS Austin. I'm a news intern there, actually, sadly, only for the next week. School's starting, but I am also with Southside Sox. I do some writing over there. It's Texas Student Television, and I do this podcast. I'm Generation Z, and I'm excited to talk some Chicago Bears today, Mom.
Yeah, thanks everyone who's followed us on YouTube, also on our website, listening to us on the ESPN Chicago app or wherever you might get your podcast. Please continue to go and download and follow, tell a friend, make sure they know that we are now a part of the ESPN Chicago app family. That's our new home. Hey, don't forget, you can get some of our fan merch at our store at TeePublic. Check out the link on our website, the Sportscaster and her
New merch coming. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're going to have some new merch coming. Your brother's going to design some of it. So, hey, in this episode, it is training camp season for the Chicago Bears and all the other teams in the National Football League. The Bears have a new staff, a new roster. We're not quite sure what to expect, but most national media outlets have the Bears as one of, if not the worst team in the National Football League this upcoming season. So, Jason, tell me what you're thinking.
Well, after I tell you what I'm thinking, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on Bears training camp, because I think it's very exciting that you've been back in business watching the guys in pads. So my thoughts are, it's really hard because in football, rebuilds don't really happen. In baseball, rebuilds happen all the time. And you went through that with the White Sox, and you're seeing it now with the Cubs, and it sucked because it's a long scale. Your team's not trying to win. It's the worst thing for sports is teams not trying to win, because the main objective of sports is trying to win. So the Bears, maybe they are trying to win this year, but the roster is really bad. There's not a whole lot of talent on offense, which is really disappointing considering that Justin Fields is the center of everything. But I'm glad that they signed some offensive linemen, some veteran offensive linemen last week. Not sure why they didn't do that last season. Jason Peters doesn't really count. The defense, a lot of new names to learn. I do love the young secondary, Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. I think are going to be two really good pieces that are in Chicago for a while. But I think that the most interesting storylines on the defense, sadly enough, are how much longer is Eddie Jackson going to be a Bear? How much longer is Roquan Smith going to be a Bear? And how much longer is Robert Quinn going to be a Bear? Otherwise, the Bears, even with this easiest schedule in the NFL, because, God, their schedule is easy. Every time I look at it, I'm like, any other team would be winning 10 to 12 games with the schedule. And you have the Bears who'd be lucky to win more than 5. So my thoughts really aren't much, and I'm more interested to hear your feedback on seeing the team in person, because everything I've heard is that it's been different than camp usually is, especially after the Nagy regime. So, Mom, why don't you fill us in a little bit on that?
Well, it's been interesting watching camp as I have the past 2 weeks now, being back after I covered the team for 20 years. And interesting, I have a different impression now of Coach Matt Eberflus than I did of his opening press conference with the Chicago Bears when they hired him. He was very much coach speak, all the acronyms, things like that, that I think works really well with a young team. And they have a lot of guys that got to prove it on one-year contracts on this roster. So I do think that works. But this team has bought in. They are physical. They want to establish an identity of playing fast and playing physical. And they are going to play the last snap like it's the first snap. You could see that in their training camp practices. But with Ryan Poles as the new GM, he has completely stripped down this roster. He has trimmed the fat and a lot of the skill that came with the fat. And they don't have a lot of skill right now on that roster. So it is going to be up to a lot of these position coaches to coach these guys up. This year is not the year, I think, to really grade Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, because they are it is just so scarce with what they have and what they have to work with. What they finish this season with will not be the same next season. Next year, when they have a ton of cap space and a really good draft position, I think you're really going to see more about what Ryan Poles is able to do with this roster.
Yeah.
But otherwise, listen, I'm willing to buy in. I'm willing until prove me wrong that it's not working. Otherwise, we'll watch and see what happens.
But buy into what?
I don't know about the veterans buying
Buy
in.
into what?
Well, it's because it is a little rah-rah at times. That's a really, really hard practice. They go all out. I think a lot
That's
of
how the Colts
veterans.
defense is. That, to be honest with you, I'm really glad to hear that because, in my opinion, like the 3-pitch strikeout of football is a missed open field tackle on defense. It's like you're a defensive player, you should be able to tackle someone in the open field. And hard practices like that, conditioning the athletes to the absolute T, that is what prevents missed open field tackles and really shores up like the fundamentals of defense. So just hearing you talk about how hard and intense their practices are, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I just think that the offense is going to come around slowly because that was the area that Ryan Poles really could not add through the draft as much. Braxton Jones, the rookie, looks like he's going to be the starting left tackle. There's a couple other kids on the offensive line, Jatiri Carter, that may get some playing time. Teven Jenkins, we don't know as we are recording this. Teven Jenkins is back at practice after missing 7 straight after reports came out, mine included, in which I was able to confirm that Ryan Poles is having conversations with other teams trying to trade Teven Jenkins. He doesn't fit their mold. He's a little bit too big for them. They like a little bit leaner, faster, more athletic. And if they could get a 5th-round draft pick or better, I think that's what they would do. I just don't think you're going to get that for a former 2nd-round pick because Ryan Pace moved up to pick him when a lot of teams did not think that they should have done that. So,
between skill and durability, and neither. I mean, we haven't seen enough of Teven Jenkins.
This is his first training
lack of durability.
He was not in Bears training camp last year. This is his first training camp. He had 1 practice in, and then he sits out 7. Undisclosed injury, did not say what it was that he was rehabbing, said he's about 90% right now. So we'll see what happens, but the offense is definitely going to take some time to come around. All right, let's bring in our 2 guys that know a little bit more than both of us do about the Chicago Bears. They are the hosts of Hoge and Jahns podcast from the Chicago Sports Podcast, longtime Bears reporter Adam Hoge, and from the Athletic Bears writer Adam Jahns joining us. Hey guys, how are you?
Good morning.
Good. What's up?
All right, so let's just get right into this with Bears camp. I've been out through the last week, and there's things I haven't seen before. Matt Eberflus is really into the situational drills. A lot of situations, it's almost like he's trying to do build muscle memory mentally as well for these guys, not just physically. Your impressions just off the bat of the difference with Matt Eberflus's training camps than what we're used to in the past with the Chicago Bears?
I think what stands out to me right away, because you always automatically compare him to who he's replacing, right? Matt Nagy always tried to be this CEO like head coach, but he never truly was. He just automatically gravitated towards the offense because it was his offense. Matt Eberflus is different. It's his team. It sounds so strange to say, but he bops around a bit more. He doesn't micromanage as much, I would say, especially with the offense. He lets his coaches coach. He's doing drills that help his coaches, specifically Luke Getsy, where you have a first-time play caller. You have Alan Williams, who's a defensive coordinator for the first time in several years. So he's helping them out, be better coaches by allowing them to coach and have mistakes in the practice field. So that stands out to me right away.
Yeah, and I think that, even just going to that CEO idea, Nagy didn't even kind of get there till year 3. I mean, especially the first season when Fangio was around, he was very open and honest about how Fangio was basically the defensive head coach, and I don't even think Nagy made too much of an effort on the field to even be around the defense. That was really something that
he taunted them occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, but it was just like it almost seemed like Nagy at times was reacting more to just what wasn't working and trying to adapt, which is fine. I mean, you need to do that. But it was always like a step too slow. Whereas I've been impressed with how much Eberflus seems to be prepared for exactly like all that talk we had for years about what exactly is the Bears' identity under Nagy. I don't know if the Bears are going to be good this year or not, but I feel like we're going to know what their identity is. I think we're already learning what the identities are on both sides of the ball. I've noticed that they practice, the individual periods are much longer. So they're spending more time in individual periods with the position coaches, letting them coach them up, learning the specific techniques that they want them to know. And a lot of those are new. Like we're seeing a lot of different drills. And then just to have like the foresight, the thing that really stuck out to me last week was that they're already in a scout team defense for the offense, practicing against a 3-4 because two of the three other teams in their division run that type of defense. So you got to be ready for it. It changes how they call things on offense. And I asked a lot of people around, hey, have you ever seen a team go in a scout team this early in camp? Because I'd never seen it. And they all said no. So I just think that that's kind of speaks to how much they're trying to think ahead of the game here.
And he continued to do that.
It sounds good, you guys, but I mean, the theory sounds good, right? But we don't really know if it's going to work, if it's going to mean anything. I mean, the other thing that stood out to me was that they don't do conditioning at the end of practice, which I don't think I think Lovey did that for a very short time where he took out conditioning every now and then. But these guys are going so full force on every single drill. I mean, I always think about the defensive line and when they're going through their blocking and they're trying to shed the blocker and it's like the windshield and they kind of go through the motions but these guys are going hard every single rep and that is their conditioning. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but we don't really know if it's actually going to work, right?
No, you don't. They're still short on talent. They're still short on receivers. The offensive line is still in flux. There's still plenty of question marks, but yes, I want to say the differences in practice style seem to be positive. There seems to be an actual plan in place. Like to your point, I think the extended individual periods has become an extension of the training, like the conditioning, because they're going so hard, they're going longer. So doing football drills longer, and that's preparing them a bit more for the actual games. But yes, this all sounds nice in theory. They've continued to do the scout team looks, and it also applies to the first team defense. We're all obsessed with watching Justin Fields and what he's looking at through these scouted looks, but the starting defense is doing the same in the opposite field. So they're preparing for something. It's different, but yes, to your point, they're still short on talent. This is still a rebuild in place with Ryan Poles.
But you can see teams win an extra game or two. Let me rephrase that. I think the buy-in and the identity part can lead to an extra win or two, even for a bad football team. You know what I mean? So to me, you have to put that in at the beginning, the foundation, even if they're going to be short on talent this year and they're not going to be a playoff team. This year is all about Justin Fields and establishing that foundation for this new coaching staff. So my early impressions from camp so far is I feel pretty good about that foundation piece, at least what we're seeing on a daily basis. That can always change. I always thought there was buy-in with Nagy in year one, and then that fell apart later. But I think we learned later that the foundation was never really put in place. So it can be a little bit of fool's gold there, and it takes a couple years to really understand that. But I do like what I've seen from the coaching staff so far. I think with Justin, it's been a little bit more up and down.
And you say it's been up and down with Fields, so I'll ask about that in a moment. But I think the thing for me that feels different with this Bears team opposed to other Bears teams, especially rebuilding Bears teams, is even on some of the worst Bears teams, there have still been objectively great players and players that fans at home know about. And it is a rebuild, and it's very early on into a rebuild, but this is a roster that is a lot more devoid of talent than Bears fans are probably accustomed to. And the silver lining to that is that players can emerge out of that. I think Trevis Gibson was a guy last year who emerged out of some play, getting extra playing time, and now he's one of the best players on the defense. Who are going to be the guys like that next for this upcoming season? Who are the guys that the fans at home probably haven't heard about yet, but by the end of the season will become household names, at least in Chicago?
Yeah, to build on your thought, Jason, you almost have like finally, like they always tell you around the league that rebuild's not a real thing in the NFL. You just try to reload, right?
Yeah.
But you're to your point, like it's so devoid of talent because they're actually trying to do the full rebuild. Like Khalil Mack is gone. Like Robert Quinn is still on the roster. I get that, but like they said goodbye to so many players that everybody knew, players that have started for a few years.
Isn't this the biggest roster turnover in the NFL?
Yeah. Even like young guys like Bilal Nichols and James Daniels, who you thought were deserving of second contracts, are no longer here. Like that's a thing. That's like a step further than other regimes have gone in their rebuilds. It is. It really is. As far as guys who could come to stand out and become household names, like I like what I'm seeing out of Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. The talent is there. The playmaking skills seem to be there. Every day they seem to be getting their hands on the ball, getting positive grades, I'm sure, after practice. So some of the rookie players, you get Braxton Jones at left tackle. You're seeing it from some of the young players. They're in headlines, which is a good thing, I think, for them. And they're not in the headlines for the bad reasons.
Yeah, I think the rookies, when you draft 11 rookies, you better have a few of those guys become household names. And certainly those guys in the secondary jump out right away. I think I still need to see more from Velus Jones Jr., but he has an opportunity just because he's the one new young wide receiver that isn't just somebody getting a second or third chance like everyone else on the roster, not named Darnell Mooney. And then somebody's got to step up on the offensive line. So the Braxton Jones thing is very intriguing. The fact that he's still out there with the ones, is that just a crazy success story? That would be a very good, important development for the Bears if that's the case. So I think there's a few candidates there. You mentioned Trevis Gibson, who could go to the next level. And then I don't know how many defensive tackles really turn into huge fan favorites, but Kyrus Tonga continues to look good to me. And the other options there are all pretty much veterans in the interior of that defense. So he's somebody that continues to make plays and was a 7th-round pick a year ago. So I do think that there are some young names here that'll emerge. And real quick on the players they lost, how many of those guys do they really miss? I'm being serious. Like, we spent like 2 years complaining about the last roster. And so the new GM comes in and gets rid of all those guys, and now everyone's upset that those guys aren't here. I don't get it. I mean, the only one that really stands out to me is obviously Khalil Mack, who I'm pretty sure could still be a very, very good football player when he's healthy. But even last year, he wasn't healthy. All these other guys, like, okay, Bilal Nichols, solid player, also has a chronic knee problem. Like, they'll be fine without him. James Daniels, he was fine. He was fine. He'll probably be better in Pittsburgh than he would be in this offense that they changed. Yeah, I don't know who they're really missing. I think they're probably missing Akeem Hicks against the run, but there's another guy that at his age, for as little as he was actually able to stay on the field towards the end, it didn't make sense to keep him around. So I don't really, yes, they reloaded. Yes, they're missing a lot of guys from last year's team, but name me one guy where it actually would have made more sense to keep him around. I'm struggling to come up with that.
I think it's more so not necessarily the actual players that they lost, but I think the idea that they invested so much into Fields, so much draft capital trading for him, and now for year 2, there's this roster that has taken a step back in terms of talent, and I don't think it necessarily matters because none of that talent's on the offense. It's really all on the defense. But I think it's just the idea of having a less competitive team a year further into Fields' development. But you said the Fields has been up and down. I'm curious to hear what you mean by that. So expand on that point a little bit.
Yeah, I think just, he's had some better days as of late, I feel like. but it's the whole offense too, I think, has been inconsistent, which isn't exactly a surprise at all. But like, even I'm thinking back to last Friday's practice, which I thought was pretty good overall. A lot of the players said it's the hardest practice they've ever been through. But even in that practice where he hit, I think I had like 3 pretty good deep shots downfield that he hit.
Yeah.
There were 2 other overthrows that kind of reminded you of Mitch Trubisky a little bit, when he has the guy wide open streaking down the middle of the field and overthrew him by 5 yards. You know what I mean? So I think that's just sort of a little bit of the inconsistency, but I also don't think that we've seen anything that really causes you to hit the panic button at all. I think there was one practice last week where that was really, really bad. That was the one where I think it became a really hot topic for about 24 hours. And then Fields has come back and quieted that down a little bit, that concern. But I'd still like to see more consistency across the board.
Let me ask you a question, Adam Jahns, about if you can you, talking about the offense, explain Luke Getsy's system and why this is not an easy system for these guys to learn. It's why they went out and got veterans for the offensive line, because you need some veterans on that line. Michael Schofield was a perfect example when he said in Denver, they ran this offense and they were terrible until about week 4 of the season when everything started to click. It could be really ugly for the first half of the season, or at least the first quarter of the season. Explain why with Luke Getsy's offense, it's going to take a while for this team to really click.
Well, I think let's start with why Matt Eberflus is intrigued by it. Because it helps young quarterbacks. There's a reliance on the run with the right guys up front, and I think they've found the athletes they want up front. You can get into this outside zone game and get to these play passes that help the quarterback, regardless of quarterback. It doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't have to be, I'm trying to think of some other examples, like Kirk Cousins. Like, they're extensions of this Shanahan, McVay, Kubiak offense that's reliant on the run, play passes, moving the launch points. That all helps quarterbacks, regardless of who he is. But it takes a while. I think maybe by week 8, week 9, you'll see what this offense really wants to be, because there's different footwork, there's different reads. Yes, it's designed to help the quarterback, but I think there's some stats out there where it takes a full year before it really takes off. Like the Packers offense took almost 2 years with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to really click under Matt LaFleur, because there's a transition. There's things to learn. I like the offense. I do believe they'll be able to run the ball. How well, I don't know, but they're going to be very reliant on it. And the better defenses that shut down that run, the Bears aren't for long days this season. They'll have a few of those defenses that come about. But just in talking to Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman, Luke Getsy a couple times, this offense is designed to help quarterbacks simplify things. But getting to those points where it does feel simple in every single play takes time, because it requires a certain skill sets up front with the offensive lineman in terms of athletes. You need receivers that create separation. You need these downhill one-cut running backs. And I think the Bears might have them, but it takes time for them to read their landmarks and learn the system and whatnot. But I don't know if I'm truly answering your question here, Peggy, but I think it's a combination of Eberflus liking the system based on the advanced research he did, based on how tough it was for him to defend. But it also takes the right talent, and that might take a year or two for the Bears to really find those players. Like Riley Reif and Michael Schofield, they're 1-year fill-ins.
Right.
It's what they are, until they could find younger options, or they could develop like a Braxton Jones or Zach Thomas and the eventual starters. It takes time for everyone to get in line with this offense.
Well, I think that, a couple things here. One is, it still should be more simple than the offense they were running previously. I look at the last scheme as a playbook that was way too big, and for how big it was, did very little to go towards the strengths of the players you actually had on the field. You can run that system if you have playmakers all over. The Bears just never had that to run that scheme. So this scheme now should be simpler, more condensed, and all the things that Jahns just named, whether it's the outside zone, whether it's, I think you're going to see a lot more boots, a lot more play action, moving the launch points. Those are all things that we were screaming into microphones for years that Nagy didn't do enough with the quarterbacks he has. I think that would have done Mitch Trubisky a lot more favors if they had been running this type of scheme back then. So those are, I think, are all good things. Where it starts to get complicated, I think, is just the offensive line really has to move as a unit. And then one thing we've consistently heard from players, from coaches, from people I've talked to about the scheme is the importance of the cadences and how many cadences there are. So that, I think, is an area where, even though I think the hope is that the Bears clean up a lot of the pre-snap penalties and things like that, we still see them in practice from time to time. And I do wonder if that's going to be an issue early on in the season that maybe gets cleaned up. The fact that they've been rotating so many different offensive linemen in there with the ones could actually be something that pays off, though, in the end, because so many of these linemen are getting reps with Fields. Regardless of who ends up winning the jobs, they're getting in there, they're getting used to his cadences, and I think that will be something that helps.
Before I know Jason has a question to wrap things up, I just want to jump real quick over to the defense and ask you guys, do you think that Quinn has bought in? I kind of laugh watching him at practice because they are ramping him up. The veteran that he is needs to be ramped up into training camp. And oh, by the way, had his Veterans Day off on the toughest day of practice so far this training camp, which kind of made me laugh. But I was watching him the other day. He had no idea where the defense was going, just in between drill to drill to drill. And he turned around and he was like going around in a circle, and he just looked at one of the other guys and he goes, "Where are we going? Where are we going?" Like it is kind of funny that he is this veteran amongst all these, like it's like Kitty Playland, and all these other kids are running around him, and he's just kind of slowly plotting to go to the next drill, to the next drill, to the next drill. I think he wants to buy in. He says he's buying in. So one question there is, do you think he's bought in? And secondly, can they go without Roquan Smith into the regular season?
I think he's bought in just because that's who he is. Like, even when he's like, I watched him Sunday in practice when we were inside. You were there, Peggy. He's smiling. He's having fun. I think he enjoys just being around his teammates and playing ball, even if he gets lost a little bit.
Yes.
In practice. Now it is unique to hear because, like, he's got special rules. Like, he is. With Eberflus, who is trying to install like his way of life, he's definitely treating Robert Quinn differently.
Jordan rules.
Yes, Jordan rules. Quinn rules.
Yeah, right.
And that's fine. I get it. He's in his 30s. He's in his 12th year. You would hope that most of his younger teammates know that he's earned it. Right. I would like to see at some point where he's practicing in every single drill. I think maybe you'll see that. At the same time, Braxton Jones is like a big storyline because he's earned the playing time at left tackle, and Robert Quinn comes out for one snap and embarrasses him yes. Quickly. You saw that. It was yes. Dang. Oh, okay, Robert Quinn.
It was that was too easy. He literally high-fived the rest of the D linemen. That was too easy.
Yeah. Go take the rest of the day off. Thanks for giving the young kids some film to work on. But,
exactly.
Yeah. I don't think Khalil Mack would have missed this time. I think Mack's a bit different, but Quinn's maybe okay with this. I don't know if it's something to watch, like Roquan Smith's situation, albeit for different reasons. But yeah, there seems to be some different rules for Robert Quinn.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah,
I gotta be honest. Both of these players, I don't care about them at all right now. I really don't. They're both going to be out there week one, assuming they don't get hurt. Roquan can't get hurt if he's not practicing, and this isn't a new thing with vet days. Lovey used to do this all the time with Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher, Olin Kreutz. Those guys got vet days all the time.
I think the point is every day's a vet day for Robert Quinn.
Yeah.
It should be. I don't care. What has he bought into? He has bought into being a pass rusher. He did that a long time ago. This guy's been on so many different teams. He flipped a coin between the Atlanta Falcons and the Chicago Bears when he came here. He is one of the more interesting human beings in the entire league. If you just talk to him, his teammates love him. That's why he won the Piccolo Award last year. He just shows up and goes and gets the quarterback. And if anything, this defense should actually make it more simple for him to do that. He's been a 4-3 defensive end before. As he's showing in practice, he doesn't have to even know what drill he's going to or what day of the week it is. If he's being told, hey, today's the day where you put your pads and your helmet on and go get the quarterback, then he's going to make Braxton Jones look silly in one-on-ones. And then the next day, if they're like, you're off, he's going to be like, cool, I'm just going to stand over here now. He just doesn't care about all the minutia and the business of football. To me, that doesn't matter at all. He could not practice the rest of training camp and probably go get a couple sacks against the 49ers in week 1.
See, I disagree with you about Roquan, though. Like, that's the business of football, keeping him off the field.
Yeah, but he'll be back. It makes no sense for him to...
No, I know his side.
Yeah.
Like, he needs a new contract to play, but this is also a brand new defense for him. He'll tell you that. He looked lost at times during OTAs. You know, Cole Kmet is wide open in his coverage. You would want him to get some... He needs practice. He does. At one point, I think he knows it too. Playing that weak side role, an invaluable role in Matt Eberflus's defense. He's going to need some practice to get good at it. He is. Now he's special enough where that transition should be quick. But come on, coach. You coach this game. The guy needs practice. He needs
but this is the same guy that sat out how long of his rookie season.
Yep.
And went right in there on the first play and sacked the quarterback in Green Bay. So, like, I'm not denying that there might be a little bit of an adjustment period.
But he practiced to get to that point. Like, he returned to Denver.
Yeah, which was right about next week, right?
Yeah.
It was right before the second preseason
You got to ramp him up.
He'll be fine. Him. I'm so not worried about that at all. I'm more worried about who the hell the other linebackers are on the team.
And whether or not
they're hard to name.
Whether or not they're packing in their car, when they leave Soldier Field.
Yeah.
Jason, go ahead and wrap it up for us.
All right, last question to wrap it up. Obviously, there are a lot of storylines. Roquan Smith, Robert Quinn, Justin Fields is probably the biggest one. Which storyline do you think is going to define Bears training camp in about a month when it's all said and done?
Oh, it's Justin Fields. It's what he does in this offense. It's always going to be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears because the Bears have never had a good quarterback. Until they do, they're not going to consistently compete in this league. Fields is the next in line. They need to develop him. It's going to be, I think he's going to have some rocky moments, just like he's having rocky moments right now in practice. The season is going to be full of ups and downs. We'll see what he becomes, but he is the end-all, be-all of storylines for the Chicago Bears.
So because it was kind of an obvious question, let me kind of amend my question a little bit. What does progress look like in year 2 for Justin Fields with an offense that is probably slightly less talented? I mean, the O-line's probably a little bit better, but the offense is just as, if not a little less talented than last year. So what does progress look like when year 2 is arguably the most telling or defining for a young quarterback?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different metrics and stats and all the stuff that you can look at with quarterbacks. Expected points added is one that I really like. But I'm going to simplify this down to touchdown to interception ratio. I think that could say a lot for what Justin Fields can do this year. Is he able to get closer to like 20 touchdowns? Which means the offense is scoring more, moving the ball more, having more success in the red zone. Little fantasy nugget too. I personally expect his rushing touchdowns to increase too, just based on some of the stuff we've seen in camp so far. And then keep the mistakes down. So keep the interceptions ideally in single digits. And if he comes out, with a much better touchdown to interception ratio, I think that'll say a lot just about the progress that he had in this season. Now, you do have to be a little bit careful of that because I do think in 18, Trubisky, was he like more like 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, something like that? So I guess I'm saying like shoot for a higher bar than that. And that would say a lot about what Justin Fields does.
I think Trubisky had like the 3rd highest QBR that year.
He
and I like
did because
QBR.
of his rushing.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that's part of it. It's part of the whole package, is it not? Yeah, just look at all the stats. He was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. Let's not be that. Let's get in the 20s. Let's flirt with the halfway point amongst average quarterbacks. Let's get the completion percentage up. Let's get the touchdown percentage up. There's so many metrics let's get the QBR up. Like if Trubisky could be third in QBR in his second year, maybe Justin Fields with this offense should be around 15 or 16.
Listen, we just need to see progress. We need to see them actually look like an offense. Right now, with the installation still happening in training camp, they don't even look like an offense yet. It's hard to watch. So, you guys, we could go on and on. There's so many things that we could talk about, but I really appreciate you guys giving us your insight. Adam Jahns, Adam Hoge, together they are Hogan Jahns podcast. Check them out. You guys, thank you for your time. We'll see you at camp.
Anytime, Peg.
Thank you.
Jason, the one thing that I wish I could have asked them was their predictions on the season, because I've already said 5 wins for the Bears. So I would have loved to hear what Adam and Adam think for the final number of wins for this team.
And, that was the hardest thing actually about having 2 guys named Adam on the show is like, when I wanted to ask Adam Hoge something, it was like, I can't say Adam because both of them are going to be like, but if I wanted to ask Adam Jahns something, it'd be like, I can't do that either because that was tough, but great guests. I mean, so knowledgeable. So you learned so much just by listening to both of them talk. And obviously being far away, I know that a lot of our listeners are Chicago, but for me being far away from home, I don't hear it all about Bears camp unless I'm talking to you or on Twitter. And to get those three sets of eyes of people that are seeing it and people that are hearing everything that's going on, really insightful for me. And I hope that our fans at home are really going to enjoy to hear that too. All
right. So how about giving us some predictions, Jason?
Predictions. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since I've been able to sit here and make some predictions. So my first one's going to be on the Bears record. I don't want to set an exact number because with a bad team, it's like they'll pick up a win. They'll pick up a BS win. Like I don't want to predict that they'll beat Green Bay. But for example, like there are some historically bad Bears teams that managed to beat Green Bay on like Thanksgiving. And that was like, whoa. So the Bears will get a win or two like that. So that's why I think the actual record is kind of silly because it's like the record doesn't really matter if they're not going to be competing for most of the year. They'll win between 4 and 6 games. I think that's just kind of how it's going to be. And it sucks because in football, you're not supposed to rebuild. Most teams are supposed to come into the year thinking that they have a little bit of a chance, but there's really no way that you can kind of size this up like, oh, I could kind of see this Bears team making a run and making the playoffs. I just like my wildest dreams for this Bears team is like still being competitive on Halloween, which, would be an accomplishment in of itself and would be fun.
That might be about the time that the team actually starts to gel together.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be fun.
Right. Do you have another prediction?
Yeah, I do have other predictions. So I've been hearing so much on the White Sox lately because like how can't you? And I actually think that they're going to go all in on Shohei Ohtani in the offseason. They did submit a trade offer for Ohtani based on things that I heard. It was a competitive offer. I just don't think the Angels were ever going to trade Shohei. How can you blame them? He's the best player in baseball. But Ohtani's a free agent after next year. The Angels are not going to be able to put together a championship roster. When you look at what Ohtani would cost, it would likely cost Andrew Vaughn, Michael Kopech. Ohtani would be a better pitcher in the rotation than Michael Kopech currently is. He'd be a better hitter in the lineup than Vaughn currently is. Even with a 50-50 or some even worse odds of re-signing Ohtani long-term, something they might need to look into. So I'm not saying that they will get Ohtani. I think that'd be a blasphemous prediction, but I will predict that at the very least, they are going to go all in. And seems like as White Sox fans and followers, we're so used to hearing the rhetoric like, oh, well, they submitted a trade offer. They finished second in the offseason or second in trades. And it's really funny. And I'm actually going to predict that exactly that's going to happen because you can already see it. They'll finish in second for Ohtani.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Third prediction. This one will be a whole lot quicker. I think that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving they're gonna start the year in Brooklyn. I can't believe I haven't predicted this on one of the shows. I thought this all along when Kyrie and KD both kind of requested their trades at the start of the NBA's offseason. I thought to myself, there's no way that Kevin Durant can be traded because there's no like asking price that a team is going to meet, but there's also no parting price to where it's going to be like, okay, like that's reasonable trading Kevin Durant. Plus all the money, plus the fact that every other team in the NBA that has 4 superstars, like they have 4 superstars, so like they're a good enough team to already win. They don't need to trade for Kevin freaking Durant. So I'm gonna predict that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they're gonna start the year in Brooklyn, which is so weird because 5 years ago, KD being on the trade market would be like teams would really be chomping at the bit, but now it's really not as much like that between the concerns about durability and his age, and it's just very interesting. But I think that it's about as interesting as it's going to get for KD and Kyrie. I don't think that they're going to change homes before the season tips off.
All right. Well, I actually do have some final thoughts, believe it or not. And my final thoughts is a message to the National Football League and Deshaun Watson. So as we await to get the final ruling on Deshaun Watson's conduct and whatever the NFL is going to impose the penalty, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. So the 6-game suspension that was recommended by the judge was because of a lack of precedence by the National Football League and putting it in their collective bargaining agreement, therefore saying you cannot do this without expecting this. Understood. Well, it's time that they change that, because among the conduct that is prohibited by the NFL's personal conduct policy are sex offenses, actions that endanger the safety and well-being of another person, and anything that undermines the league's integrity. These crimes against women, okay, he wasn't guilty of committing a crime, but his actions endangering the safety, undermining the integrity of the league, yeah, that pretty much happened at least 30 times, could be up to 60 times. And because of the way the NFL has handled some misappropriation conduct with women, with other teams in the league, is why so many attorney generals are looking at suing the National Football League. Illinois is one of those attorney generals as well. There are too many suspensions that show why he should be getting at least a 1-year suspension. There is the Travis Henry, the Darren Waller, Calvin Ridley suspended a year for betting on an NFL game while he was away from his team. It doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason. And it's time for the NFL to kind of get some balls and really put something behind their personal conduct policy. And enough is enough. We shouldn't have to keep arguing this. You have made some strides when it comes with women in the National Football League working for teams. Now you have to put some money where your mouth is. And I'm just hoping that once the final word is put out for Deshaun Watson and whatever he is going to sit out, that it is something that really emphasizes what the league is trying to say when it comes to personal conduct policies and allegations against women. You don't have to be guilty of a crime to still do improper things that would make you embarrassed as a National Football League, as a team, wearing your jersey. And quite frankly, the Cleveland Browns should be ashamed that their fans are lining up the way they are to get autographs.
I was just going
it's really pretty sickening. Like, you cannot deny that there was improprieties. Okay,
yeah,
you cannot deny that.
Yeah,
and,
that video was disgusting.
Don't put him up on a pedestal like that.
Seeing those fans kind of mobbing him, and it's gross. It's like, at the end of the day, it's sports. I mean, we love sports. We've made a career out of sports. Hopefully, I will. But at the end of the day, that is disgusting. And when I saw that, I was like, what the hell? So well put, Mom. I think that the league needs to start. They have set such a big precedent on things that don't matter, such as marijuana and betting on sports. And now it's time for them to really put their money where their mouth is with freaking domestic violence. It's
Yeah.
everyone knows it's not
I-
right to put your hands on girls. So
I know.
well said.
All right. We would like to thank our guests today, Adam Hoge and Adam Jahns. Don't forget to check out the Hogan Jahns podcast on The Athletic. Also, thank you to our folks at ESPN Chicago and Jake Cantu, our producer at ESPN Chicago and the ESPN Chicago app. Jason, if people want to find us, where can they go?
The ESPN Chicago app. I downloaded it myself, and I cannot wait to see us on there. I believe that this will be the first episode that'll be available, so that'll be sweet. It'll be. I'm just so excited to see the Sportscaster and son on there. So ESPN Chicago app. Obviously, everywhere else you can see us on YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, podcast. Literally at that point, if you're listening to us on some other service, I'm curious as to what it is, because Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, ESPN 1000 app, YouTube, those are really all you should need. So,
and don't forget to like us and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. So that will do it for our Bears
really
training
quick.
camp episode. Yes, Jason.
We have a Twitter now. Twitter now. Follow us on Twitter. It is at TSAHS pod. So first letter of every word in our name, abbreviated pod. It's got the logo on there and everything. It's in my bio on Twitter. Everything from the show from now on, we're going to try to really push it on that Twitter account. We'll be doing quotes leading up to shows. We'll be advertising the shows. We'll be doing we'll be doing a lot on there. So that's going to be the new home for all the latest on the shows, even when we're not recording episodes. So really exciting. Make sure to go follow our Twitter.
Please do. Thank you all for joining us. Jason, have a good one. We'll see you when you get home this week before school starts.
See you in a couple of days. Looking forward to plenty of home-cooked meals and a full cabinet of snacks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. So long.